everybody, welcome back to JT Channel, and that's right, we are to episode 3 of Retro Wrestling Rewind, and this time we go all the way back to 1997 for In Your House Ground Zero, the very first ever meeting of Shawn Michals and The Undertaker. And the whole point of this retro thing is 3 things. Or what I mean is there's 3 elements, and they all start with the letter M. There are matches, memories, and moments. If I can get one of those 3 things out of any of these shows, that's why they're on the list. This show has all 3, and all 3 are based around this main event match, which we will get to in just a little bit. And what's really interesting is this is the first time these two ever wrestled each other, and it's crazy considering they're both in the WWE around 8 years at this point. Well, Undertaker debuted in 1990, so I guess 7 years. But the point still stands. It was a really good story, and all off the back of SummerSlam 1997, where The Undertaker was wrestling Bret Hart. Shawn Michals was the guest referee. He went to hit Bret Hart with a steel chair. Bret moved. He hit The Undertaker. 1, 2, 3. I think Bret won the title or retained the title. I actually didn't take the chance to look at that. But then when Shawn was given the chance to apologize, he didn't. DX beat up The Undertaker, and we got to this match. Now, I would like to point out that a lot of the shows that I put on my little list for Retro Wrestling Rewind were based off of one specific match, moment, or memory, where, again, all 3 are based in this match. If you were to bust into my house and put a gun to my head, first, I'd ask you to calm the hell down. What's wrong with you? But secondly, if your question was, name another match from this show, I would have been shot because I don't remember anything else from this show. But let's go relive it together for In Your House Ground Zero, or one of the reasons I remember it the way The Undertaker says it, Ground Zero. Even with all that goodwill and the opening video package, which is fantastic, and again, The Undertaker saying 0, the opening matchup is so hard because it's Brian Pillman versus Goldust. And while the character Goldust is controversial and silly and goofy and dumb, this was more Dustin Runnels than it was anything else, which sounds cool at first until you dive into the story. So I want to get it out of the way real quickly before I get into this match, that I love both of these guys. Brian Pillman changed the wrestling industry, and if he hadn't passed away in 1997, he likely would still be wrestling today. He'd be one of those legend wrestlers that never stopped. He would have been a huge star in the Attitude Era, and who knows, he might not even be in the WWE, but I guarantee you he'd still be wrestling. And Dustin Runnels, Goldust, Dustin Rhodes, is still wrestling in 2026. I don't know if he knows how to stop wrestling. So again, and they're both incredible back then. Dustin is still incredible now. But it's the problem of the story, because Brian Pillman wanted one more match with Goldust, and I guess you can kind of compare the story, at least a small bit of it, to what Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio would do in 2005 with the whole I'm Your Poppy stuff with Dominic, because Brian Pillman claims that Goldust and Marlena's daughter is actually his daughter. And it's the same thing, sort of, that Ray and Dominic and Eddie did all the way back in 2005, but it's much worse. The Ray, Dominic, Eddie stuff was at least fun, entertaining, and completely bonkers. This is just bad. It's bad all around, because the match taking place at Ground Zero, if Brian Pillman loses, he promises to leave the WWF forever, which was a massive lie. Wrestlers said that all the time in the 90s and then would just come back to the WWF. But if Brian Pillman wins, he wins Marlena's services for 30 days. Now, that doesn't sound bad if you're a longtime wrestling fan. That's been happening for 30, 40, 50 years. You lose a match and your manager, your friend, your partner, your sister, when it comes like the Bellas, have to be your whatever for 30 days. We've seen it all the time in multiple companies. But it is sold and it is treated like Marlena, who is Dustin Rhodes' wife, I don't know about real life anymore, don't ask me questions I don't know the answers to, has to go with Brian Pillman for 30 days. Doesn't go home, doesn't get to stay with Marlena, or her husband. And again, it's sold like this. Jim Ross, Vince McMahon, Jerry Lawler, and Michael Cole, the voiceover guy, all sell it like their daughter is going to be without a mother for 30 days. It really ruins this, because why? Why? What does that even do? I know it's soap opera crap, and that's what wrestling used to be, and still can be sometimes. But it just doesn't work. You take these 2 incredible workers and put them in a crappy story. Again, Goldust getting to kind of just dress like Goldust, but wrestle like Dustin Rhodes is kind of fun. And the match is good. I mean, how couldn't it be? It's Brian Pillman and Dustin Rhodes. But the entire time, Jerry Lawler is making all these terrible, terrible comments, and believe me, they don't ever stop. Why they ever put one of the greatest in-ring performers of all time on commentary in a perverted uncle role, I will never understand. And it gets worse when we get to the end of the match. Again, you can't really criticize most of the in-ring stuff. You can criticize Brian Pillman chasing Marlena, but it comes down to Marlena taking this purse that she has. It's not very big, it's a little gold purse. She wants to hit Brian Pillman. Brian Pillman takes it from her, hits Goldust, pins Goldust for the 1, 2, 3, meaning that, yes, now Marlena has to go with Brian Pillman for 30 days. Apparently, again, in real life, not just as a management services. And then he kidnaps Marlena, runs away with her, and then Dustin Rhodes is chasing her. It just falls apart when the story comes together. It turns out there was a brick in her purse, which is now broken in half. Again, the absolutely horrendous commentary from Jerry Lawler just continues. And I mean continues throughout the whole night. Up until, I think, the second to last match, maybe. Like, for most of the show, at least once a match, Jerry Lawler either asks a really creepy, gross question or says things that make you just do this. You know, you just keep pushing, and maybe if you push hard enough, you'll forget. And then, of course, afterwards, we have to cut to Dustin crying and throwing furniture. So, bad taste, really ruins the match. I only gave it 2.5 stars, and that hurts. That sucks. To look at two wrestlers that changed the world. And again, one of them is still wrestling. If the other one, if Brian Pillman had not passed away, I guarantee you he would have been a multi-time world champion and still on it today. So only 2.5 stars. Not a great start for In Your House. Unfortunately, things don't get much better, but for a completely different reason. This isn't bad stories or whatever, but it's Brian Christopher versus Scott Putski. Now, the first thing I'm going to tell you is every single time I hear the name Scott Putski, I go, who? Apparently he was around for a good chunk of time in the 90s, but I don't remember him at all. This story was based off of Jerry the King Lawler and Brian Christopher attacking Scott Putski, which were actually father and son, and that was a fun little story in the late 90s. Brian Christopher was Jerry Lawler's real life son, and they would always play off of, oh, we're not related at all, even though they literally looked the same. Brian Christopher's another one who passed away far too soon, but I think that was in the 2000s. This is a good match, right? For what happens, it's a good match. It's a light heavyweight match. Scott Putski seems like a big dude, so I was obviously, excuse me, I'm going to say honestly, surprised at how well they worked together. It was fast-paced. There were Hurricane Ranas. There were dives. This was good. I was getting into it. And then the match has to be called off because Brian Christopher goes to do a flip dive onto Scott Putski on the floor. Scott is not in the right position. Not only does he kind of knock himself loopy, but he blows out his knee. It's bad because Brian Christopher gets back in the ring. Jerry Lawler is, of course, talking up. And the referee gets to 9, realizes Scott Putski isn't getting back in, goes to the outside, checks on him, calls the match. Now, fair play to Jerry the King Lawler, who I'm sure was supposed to do some stuff with Brian Christopher after the match, but since Scott Putski was injured, instead he grabs a microphone and tries to cut a promo and get some heat. Really good improv lines from Jerry Lawler, but it sucks because this was a good match. I was starting to get into it. Again, I may not remember Scott Putski very well, but he's a good wrestler. And Brian Christopher, again, gone way too soon and an incredible in-ring performer and character when Too Cool and stuff like that came around. But I couldn't give this match a rating because of the injury. Like, it feels wrong to rate a match that is called because of injury, right? So, other than that, I would say that these two are good wrestlers. This is a good match. You should go out of your way to check out the portions that do go well. But once that happens, it just kind of, it's like, oh man. And I don't know how long Scott Putski was out or anything, but good performance by both men. Love the Jerry Lawler, Brian Christopher stuff. It just sucks that we couldn't get a proper ending to this. And yeah, that's that. No rating for that one. Up next, we had a triple threat match between Savio Vega, Farouk, and Crush. And honestly, from this point forward, this show actually gets pretty good. If the match beforehand hadn't have ended the way it did, and the match before that didn't have such a shit story, this could have been an all-round decent pay-per-view. But unfortunately, things do happen. But this is a really good match. It is based off of a feud between Los Boricuas, the DOA, and the Nation of Domination, which was a fantastic thing back in the day. A three-gang rivalry, I guess is what you'd call it, faction feud. I just made that faction feud. But this is good stuff. These are three really good wrestlers. Crush is super over. Something else I don't remember is Crush being over, but I think it's the DOA that's over. A group like the DOA would be over in the 90s crowd, so he gets a huge pop. A lot of this is Crush and Farouk being powerhouses with big slams and spine busters and massive boots and clotheslines. And Savio Vega gets some interesting power moves in there, which caught me off guard again because I remember him being more of the high flyer, which he does do some high flies, some drop kicks, I think there's a Hurricane Rana, some cross bodies. This is a fun match to watch. I expected the Bariquas, the DOA, and the Nation to all get involved. None of them ever did, which I thought was an interesting choice. Another weird choice is that WWE and the WWF and the ring announcers or the commentators go out of their way to describe how a triple threat match works. Maybe they were still a new concept in the World Wrestling Federation in 1997. Excuse me, I don't really know. But they really hammer home that the rules are one fall to a finish. But in the end, there's a lot of stuff between Farouk and Crush. But then Savio Vega hits a spinning wheel kick, actually, not a back kick, spinning wheel kick to Farouk and gets the 1-2-3. Good for Savio Vega. He is a massively underrated wrestler, in my opinion. I think that the pop he got at Backlash in Puerto Rico with the Bad Bunny, I think that proved that we all, as American wrestling fans, I guess, really underrated and underestimated how good Savio Vega was. You should go back and watch any of his stuff. Maybe not his stuff from the King of the Ring 1995, but he was a good wrestler. This was a really good match. This got me back into it, right? With the crap from the first match and the injury in the second match, I was kind of like, man, is this show just cursed? And I remember Danhausen being around in 1997. Papa Shango might have been. Completely different story for a completely different show. But this was good. This really got the show back on track after everything. I don't know what happens next after this. Well, I kind of do, and I don't really want to get into it here, but a good match. I gave it 3 stars. I thought at this point, okay, 3 stars means average. Like, it wasn't brilliant 5-star territory, and there were some lower points, which happens in a lot of matches on this show. Well, let me rephrase that. It happens in another match on the show that does get a lower rating because of it. But this was good stuff. I enjoyed this a lot, and Savio Vega gets the win, 3 stars. We then have a quick advert for a Stone Cold Steve Austin VHS, which made me feel old. If you don't know what a VHS is, get out of here. But then we move into a match which Vince McMahon calls a different kind of wrestling. It is Max Mini versus El Torito. It is the Minis division. It is little people wrestling. And if you remember this, you know how good it was. If you don't remember this, well, I'm about to tell you about it. So I just said little people wrestling. Basically, it was a midgets division, more or less, where Vince McMahon would book smaller wrestlers, midgets, little people, to wrestle. Unfortunately, as we found out many moons later, he only booked it because he thought it was funny. But this was really, really good. And Max Mini, to this day, is someone that everyone remembers because of how good he was as a wrestler. And some of you that are longtime wrestling fans may be scratching your heads saying, did he just say El Torito? Because in the 2000s, there was an El Torito, another little person that had a feud with Hornswoggle and had that awesome WLC match that I hope we get to talk about someday. But no, in the 90s, there was another El Torito, and he was massive for the division. He was a good foot or two taller than Max Mini, and he was really big. So it was the big man, little man match. Max Mini was always going to win. I think it was an incredibly fun match. Really just a lucha match, right? It was just luchadors that happened to be little people. And it was really fun to watch. Because El Torito is the bigger of the two, he does all the power stuff, all the power game, while Max Mini is hitting like springboards and crossbodies, drop kicks, and acai moonsault, which was just not a move in American wrestling in 1997. So fans were absolutely losing their minds. I can pick up my son's toy if I can reach it. He continues to just fly around the ring before he hits a sunset flip on El Torito and gets the 1-2-3. Just a really fun match. I think in my original notes, I wrote, finally shit gets good, because that's how I felt. This was a really fun match. At this point, best match on the card, 3.5 stars. Again, it's just a lucha match with two little people. So how can you not get into it? It does suck when you know that Vince McMahon wasn't like behind him or anything. He's just like, ha ha ha, little people wrestling. My voice is really gone because I'm sick. So I couldn't do a good Vince McMahon impression there. But I had fun watching it. You should check it out. This is this is probably the second best thing on the show. After this, we get into all the unfortunate messiness with Stone Cold Steve Austin and his neck injury. Again, if you know, you know. If you don't know, I'm about to tell you. In 1997, maybe at SummerSlam, I'm not entirely sure, Stone Cold Steve Austin wrestled a match with Owen Hart. Owen Hart did a tombstone. He didn't sit down right. You know, in a tombstone, you go down to your knees. Owen went down to his ass. He sat out. He did a sit-out tombstone and broke Stone Cold Steve Austin's neck. I don't know if he believes to this day that Owen Hart never properly apologized or anything, but at the time, they made it a story. Stone Cold was thankfully not paralyzed, but he couldn't wrestle. So, because he was WWE's biggest star and he could physically appear, he wasn't paralyzed or anything, he would still do story beats and things like that. So, on this show, Stone Cold Steve Austin and Dude Love had to give up their tag team titles, and we were going to have a fatal four-way matchup, four-way elimination match. I'll explain all that messiness as well, to determine the new champions. But first, we had to have titles given up. So here comes JR, here comes Sergeant Slaughter, who was the general manager or the commissioner of WWF at the time. And out comes Dude Love. He gives up his title. He says it hurts his heart and pains his prostate. I don't know why that made me laugh, but Mick Foley's just an icon. Then Stone Cold Steve Austin comes out. If you are ever having a bad day, if you are sitting at home right now watching this man saying, man, I don't really enjoy my day, I need something to pick me up, go watch any Stone Cold Steve Austin reaction that will instantly make you happy. You'll instantly want to go, oh, where's Stone Cold? Why isn't he at my house right now? Because this is just some random show, right? In Your House was meant to be a B show, smaller matches, smaller things, not a big deal. But this crowd loses their mind when the glass breaks. Stone Cold Steve Austin comes out, and it is just the best thing. I was in tears laughing because he calls Sergeant Slaughter a jackass. He calls Jim Ross a fat ass. He throws the belt around. He flips everybody off. It's Stone Cold Steve Austin. But he does give the title up. I think he's also genuinely mad. Like, not at WWF, but he's mad that his neck is broken and he can't do the thing he loves. So when he throws the belt on the ground and he asks Sergeant Slaughter, do you want the belt? And Sergeant Slaughter doesn't answer fast enough. That's when he goes, is it a yes or a no, jackass? And the way he says it, he sounds genuinely angry. And then he gives the belt to Sergeant Slaughter. Sergeant Slaughter walks off. Then JR has a microphone, and that's when Stone Cold goes, you got something to say? Say it fast. And it's only funny because I remember Jim Ross and Stone Cold Steve Austin being the best of friends. This is nuts. And then JR goes into this big spiel about how, I want you back soon, and the fans want you back soon, and everybody wants to see the old Stone Cold in full health. And Stone Cold goes, yeah, well, and then he stuns Jim Ross. He stuns Jim Ross, and it is sold like Jim Ross has been shot. Literally, who shot JR? Yes, bud. JR has to be, stretchered out, and Stone Cold is chased off by security. It's good stuff. It's a fun segment. It was a good way to keep Steve Austin on TV, even though he couldn't wrestle. I'm so sorry I have to keep going off screen. My son cannot hold on to his toy yet. But it was a good way to keep him on TV, kind of like they're doing right now with Chelsea Green. She's injured, but they're keeping her on TV. Matt Cardona wrestled on SmackDown, even though he has that's a storyline injury, but you get my point. And we weren't done talking about Stone Cold, so this was a good segment, and it did lead right into the four-way elimination tag team match, which, just like the triple threat match, WWE feels like they have to go out of their way, WWF, Vince McMahon, Jerry Lawler, feel like they have to go out of their way to explain the rules, which is interesting because fatal four-way usually means first pinfall submission wins. But in this case, it's actually elimination, so it is what it is, whatever. People get stuff wrong all the time. It happens. Ugh. But, sorry. Anyway, I am, again, being sick doesn't help my brain. But it is the Godwins, the Headbangers, Owen Hart, the British Bulldog, and the Legion of Doom. We get backstage pre-recorded promos from the Godwins and the Headbangers. We get a live promo from Owen Hart, who cusses out Stone Cold Steve Austin for hurting Jim Ross. We get a Legion of Doom promo, which is just two very large men with face paint screaming. Excuse me. But it is intense. And before we get into the rundown of the match, I am legally obligated to remind you and tell you, if you don't already know, about the Godwins. The Godwins were farmers whose names were Phineas I. Godwin and Henry O. Godwin, meaning their names pushed together, their initials were Pig and Hog, because that's what Vince McMahon liked in the 90s, was weird gimmicks like this. Also, Phineas went on to be Midian. I didn't know that. But this is not great. Like, you would think a four-way tag team match, even in the 90s, couldn't be bad. But you see what I'm doing here? I'm trying to come up with words. I just can't. There are major sections in this match where two people tag in, and the crowd's like, oh, here we go. And they just stand there, and they circle the ring, and they do a lockup and a drop kick, and then they tag out again. And the two guys in the ring now do the same thing. There's just a lot of nothing. There's a whole lot of nothing for what seems like about a year before the Legion of Doom, who are feuding with the Godwins, go out and get the Godwins' little bucket. They used to have slop in it, and start whacking the Godwins with it. So the Legion of Doom get disqualified, and I guess the Godwins actually are the ones who brought it in, so they get disqualified too. I don't know. The point is, those two teams are just gone. Excuse me. Which means we're down to Owen Hart and the British Bulldog taking on the Headbangers, which is a good little match, right? I really don't want to take away from that. Both the Headbangers, Mosh and Thrasher, were decent wrestlers, at least, again, for the time. They were doing things you didn't really see all that often. And Owen Hart, what do you want me to say? Same with the British Bulldog. We know how good both of them are. Owen Hart was ahead of his time. He likely influenced today's generation more than anyone, to the point where AEW has a whole tournament based on him. But really, this is all about the finish, because the referee is distracted. Owen Hart's trying to put Mosh or Thrasher, I don't remember which one, into the sharpshooter. The crowd starts going nuts, because who's coming down the aisle? Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's without a shirt now, so everyone's losing their mind even more. He comes into the ring, and in one of the smoothest stunners I've ever seen in my life, Owen Hart gets pushed off from trying to do the sharpshooter. He turns around, and Steve Austin just grabs his head and drops him. No boot to the midsection. He just drops him with a stunner. Again, is incredibly smooth looking, because the way Owen Hart turns around just falls into it. The Headbangers get the pin. 1, 2, 3. We have new tag team champions, which was going to happen anyway. It is Mosh and Thrasher. The crowd actually goes pretty crazy. The crowd is really behind the Headbangers, which I do remember them being super over. But this was not a good match. Like, I'm looking back at my notes here, and it was just kind of a slog for a lot of it. Again, the crowd tries to do their best to get behind, like, the LOD and the Headbangers, but I can only bring myself to give this match 2 stars. It's kind of boring. It's just there for a vehicle for another Steve Austin segment. And the Legion of Doom, I love them. I always will love them. I was actually in the arena the night they were announced for the Hall of Fame back in 2007, I want to say that was. God, I wish I could remember. But the fact that they always were so bad about losing means that kind of sucked. And I don't really know why the Godwins got eliminated. I mean, again, they might have brought the bucket in, but it was the LOD who started whacking them with it. But it's fine. Crowd loves the Headbangers. We get to see them celebrating in the back at one point. So that was cool. And, of course, they continued on the Owen Hart, Steve Austin story, feud, whatever. So the Headbangers, after this match, are the brand new WWF Tag Team Champions. But, again, I couldn't go any higher than 2 stars. We get a quick backstage segment. I'm trying to make these videos shorter. The only thing that's going to make them longer is my stuttering. Title. With Jim Ross and Sergeant Slaughter, JR is really mad about Steve Austin, and he tells Sergeant Slaughter to tell Vince, even though Vince can see this because it's a video playing on the screens or whatever, that if he says, quote, if this shit happens again, I won't be here anymore. So that's fun. JR threatening to quit over it. Then we get to our next matchup, which is Bret the Hitman Hart versus the Patriot, or Del Wilkes, for the WWF title. And this one hurts just like the opening match hurt, because Bret the Hitman Hart earned the nickname, the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. He's one of those wrestlers that in his prime could have wrestled, I don't know, what do people say, a fish, a broom, some inanimate object, although fish aren't inanimate, you get my point, and could have had a 3 to 4 star match regardless. And Del Wilkes, the Patriot, isn't a bad wrestler or anything, but the whole point of the gimmick was because Bret Hart was a heel and Del Wilkes was the Patriot, American, you get the point. To the point where Bret Hart's getting booed and middle fingers and all this. But this just wasn't for me. Now, Bret Hart and the Patriot, what they decided to do was work a much slower paced, intentional match. Like, most of the time, it's just working on body parts. Bret Hart is working on one of the Patriot's legs. The Patriot's working on one of Bret Hart's arms. And it's not that is boring, but it does kind of sit for a long time where there's just nothing happens to the point where the fans aren't even reacting. And that, as always, if the fans aren't reacting, it kind of takes the energy away from you. If you can hype yourself up without the fan reaction on the TV, that's fine. But most people need the fan reaction to kind of gauge, like, is this good or am I crazy? It doesn't always work that way. We'll talk about SummerSlam 2014 sometime, I'm sure. Or 15, whatever, the Brock John Cena match. Not the WrestlePalooza one. Anywho, when it comes down to it, this just wasn't for me. Most of the match wasn't for me. I was really excited to see Bret Hart and see what he could do with the Patriot. It's just all the working over body parts. There's lots of just, again, long stretches where it feels like nothing is happening. Yes, they're technically submissions, like they're gritty and they're like, oh, I'm working over this body part, but it just sits there for ages and nothing happens. It really, there's like a back couple minutes of this match where it does kind of pick up. Bret Hart does get to do the sharpshooter on the turnbuckle, which is always nice. I love seeing that move in the modern day. I loved it even more seeing it when Bret Hart does it, and I love it perhaps the most rewatching it and re-seeing it again. But eventually British Bulldog comes out. There's a bunch of fracas. The Patriot goes to go fight the Bulldog. Oh my God. I almost forgot about this until we're talking about it. This is so dumb. Referees are ridiculous. So the British Bulldog is out there with the Patriot. And then the Patriot's fighting off the British Bulldog. Bret Hart comes out to fight off the Patriot. And then Vader comes out. Excuse me. Vader comes out. This big brawl breaks out. And the referee is yelling at Vader to stop, to knock it off. And you know who Vader's beating up? Bret Hart. Why wasn't that a disqualification? I have no idea. Jerry Lawler even says, wait, so the match is going to continue when they eventually get back in the ring? And Vince McMahon, the commentator and owner of the World Wrestling Federation, goes, well, it's up to the referee. And I'm like, oh my God. So why don't all referees do that? Why don't all referees just allow anything to happen all the time? Why deal with disqualification finishes? Just let things happen. It made no sense. It made the referee look like an idiot, especially considering all the nonsense that was coming our way very, very shortly. But eventually, no, Brooklyn. But eventually, the Patriot goes for the sharpshooter. He gets it. Bret breaks out of it, puts him in the sharpshooter. Patriot gives up. Bret Hart retains his title. Afterwards, he beats up the Patriot. Hits him with a pile driver, punches him, kicks him, all this stuff. And then Bret Hart leaves. And then the Patriot gets up and walks to the back going all, ugh. The reason I want to mention that is because what does that say about, I know Jim Ross is a commentator, right? But the fact that just a few minutes ago, 10, 20 minutes ago, Jim Ross took a stunner and had to be like taken to the hospital. But the Patriot was in a grueling match and got hit with a pile driver and kicked and punched and beat the hell up. And he just kind of gets up and walks off. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking for too much in it. I did enjoy the last little spell besides the non-disqualification. I like the sharpshooter on the turnbuckle. I like heel Bret Hart a lot. He understood his role. Heel, face, middle, didn't matter. He always understood it. But I only gave this match 2.5 stars. That half star is because the 2-star match and the other 2.5-star match, I'm trying to grade on a curve the more I do this show, the more that I am into doing this. I want to make sure that I'm being unbiased and fair. It is Bret Hart. He is one of the best of all time. He can have a good match with anybody. This just wasn't for me personally. If you love the whole working over body part stuff, check this match out. The non-disqualification thing is going to drive you crazy. It drove me crazy. But it was good. It was fine. I also want to enjoy anything we get from Bret Hart in WWF in 1997 because we all know what happens in November 1997. So 2.5 stars for this WWF title match. Bret Hart's just the best, man. Then we get to our main event. The whole reason I'm doing this show is The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels. This feud had been building since that SummerSlam, and this is so nuts and is so funny and is so entertaining that I will never, ever be able to forget it. I did, again, try to be unbiased about the matchup itself, but it's everything else is the reason I love this match so much. Because Shawn Michaels comes out, he cuts a promo, he comes out, he does the... I don't think any children watch my channel, but he does the stupid jerking off motion about 90,000 times on his way to the ring. His pyro doesn't go off on time, so he's mad about that. Then The Undertaker comes out, and The Undertaker's aura in 1997 is off the damn charts. He just is, the storm hits, there's thunder before the gong. I say gong instead of dong because there's immature people. But before his gong even goes off, there's thunder, there's lightning, it's just the lights flashing. He comes to the ring with all the smoke, and the lights are down. It is just crazy. They start to brawl early on. They just get into this big fight. Well, actually, let me back up. Shawn Michaels is so scared of The Undertaker, which helps. That helps the aura of the character, that he has the referee, and he won't let go of him. So you know what Undertaker does? Knocks out the referee. He just does it. He's like, screw you. I want to beat up Shawn Michaels. So he beats up the referee. I'm stopping here to let you know that you are going to find out why I call this match lovingly, with all the love in my heart, the Great Referee Massacre of 1997. So that's one referee. I believe this was Mike Chioda? That sounds right. So, no, Charles Robinson, maybe. Whatever. Who cares who the referee's names are? I'm joking. But one referee's down. They start to fight. They were fighting on the outside. They're fighting on the inside. They're beating the hell out of each other. When another referee comes down, which is Earl Hebner. Poor Earl Hebner. How is he still alive after this match? He rings the bell. The match officially begins. He takes... Well, let me slow down. I want these videos to be a little shorter than my first one, obviously. But Undertaker and Shawn Michaels get into it. It does get a little bit slower when the match is officially going. Shawn Michaels goes and gets a chair. Undertaker and Shawn Michaels are fighting. Undertaker gets the chair. Shawn Michaels drop kicks the Undertaker with the chair into Earl Hebner. Earl Hebner gets hit with the chair. He's knocked out. Excuse me. They start brawling some more. I believe Shawn hits an elbow drop or something. Goes for a pin. He gets a 1. He gets a 2. The Undertaker takes Shawn Michaels and throws him on top of Earl Hebner. The match continues for a while. I think The Undertaker may hit a big choke slam or he hits a big move. I apologize for not knowing what. But there's a lot going on here. He gets a pin. He gets a 2. Shawn kicks out. It might have been the brass knucks. There was a spot where Rick Rude gives Shawn Michaels brass knucks. Hits The Undertaker, only gets a 2 count. Undertaker gets the brass knucks. Hits Shawn Michaels, only gets a 2 count. He also has pulled the brass knucks out of Shawn Michaels' pants. That's an interesting scene. And point is, Earl Hebner eats a choke slam. Earl Hebner gets absolutely murked during this match. It continues on. Triple H comes out. Chyna comes out. They're all beating up The Undertaker. Shawn Michaels picks up Earl Hebner and says, "Are you okay? Are you good?" And then he throws Earl Hebner in the turnbuckle and takes him out again. What a fucking jackass. I don't mean to drop the F-bomb here. I'm trying to avoid him, but what a jackass. That's his whole character, though. He even does a shrug like, whoop, oh well. They continue to brawl. There's this, that, and the other. Eventually, Tim White comes out. I feel like there's a third referee I missed who also gets wiped out. I just don't remember what referee that is. I think that that might be Mike Chioda, who runs down and then gets punched after somebody doesn't get a 3 count. Point is, there are referees everywhere. Every referee is dead. Tim White comes out, calls the match. Calls it because too many referees are dying. But they keep fighting. Tim White eventually gets taken out as well. This is when the wrestlers start to come out. Like, the locker room starts to empty. And, well, before that, like, Gerald Briscoe and a couple other stooges, corporate people come out and get beat up. I don't mention Pat Patterson because I forgot to mention that when Bret Hart was beating up the Patriot after his match, he also punched Pat Patterson in the face. But we fast forward to this match, and then wrestlers start coming out. And Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker start punching wrestlers. And it's like, no one can keep these two apart. And then it happens. And I'm pretty sure, I should have looked it up, but I don't think I need to due to the reaction and from what I was seeing and hearing with my eyes and ears. Because that's what you see and hear with. The Undertaker does that dive. And it is probably the best dive he's ever done because it was the first one. I know the one WrestleMania 22 is impressive because he jumps over a casket. I know the ones with Shawn Michaels at WrestleManias were good. He never had a bad one, right? But this one is he gets so much hang time. He soars through the air like nuts. Just nothing. It's the smoothest thing you've ever seen in your life. He wipes out Shawn Michaels and a bunch of other wrestlers. In the fracas, Shawn gets rushed to the back. Undertaker gets in the ring. His music starts to play. He does the whole sitting on his knees thing. And it is just a mess, but it is so much fun from start to finish. I don't know how much time of actual match there was. But this was so good. I gave it 3.5 stars. I know it doesn't have a finish. It technically gets thrown out. But it's the Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. And this was the first time they ever wrestled. And they already had the chemistry. They already had the character dynamics. Shawn knew how to act towards The Undertaker. The Undertaker, he's had his character down his entire career, even by 1997. This was just great. Every moment of it was a blast. Every moment of it was fun. You were never bored. You were never bored because even at the very beginning when Shawn Michaels, it takes like a minute of Shawn Michaels running around the ring, holding a referee going, hoof, 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 and you're just laughing because he looks so stupid. The Undertaker's like, all right, you know what? Punch the referee in the face. Let's go. It's funny. It's fun, it's brutal, and then again, that dive, you'll never get over. So 3.5 stars with Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels at Ground Zero. And we all know where this is leading. The Hell in a Cell match at Bad Blood, the very first one. That is a show that Simon Miller has covered, and as I've told you before, I don't want to cover any retro ups and downs shows, because I think he's much better at this. So I implore you to go watch the retro ups and downs about that. And I also implore you to go check out Dark Side of the Ring of Brian Pillman, the Brian Pillman episode, or episodes, might have been 2, because on the day of Bad Blood 1997, Brian Pillman passed away. So it's all of that madness, but that's it for this. And as far as what I gave the show, as much as I enjoyed the main event and some of the matches, I still only gave it a B, because the way I see my rating system and most rating systems, S and A are great, fantastic, wonderful shows. B and C are middle. They're good, but they're not great. They're average. And C is on the lower side of average. And we all know D and F are terrible. So I think this is on the upper side of average. It's a little above average, but I don't think it's A territory. It's a fun show. There is a lot of stuff that brings it down. So average, it gets a B. That does it for In Your House Ground Zero. Let's find out what we're doing next time. All right, here we go. I have the D20 right here. Handy dandy notebook. Let's do this. Whoa. All right. It kind of bounced off the notebook, but I'm taking it, landed on 15, which is an episode of Monday Night Raw. I don't know if you saw on that brief look at my notebook, but numbers 15 and 16 will always be episodes of Raw and SmackDown, because I feel like there have been good enough episodes of both those shows to cover. The Monday Night Raw I will be covering was the night that Shawn Michaels and John Cena wrestled for almost 1 hour. Don't know what happened on the rest of the show, but we're going to find out. So thank you everybody so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I do apologize that this is not weekly. It'll be as often as I can do it. Good enough for me. Leave comments down below if you have any ideas for shows you want me to add to the list. And remember, there will always be a list of 20 and we'll roll the die every time. But until next time, this is JT Channel. I am JT, and I will see you in the next one.